Hello everybody, my name is Faethodas and today in this video I'm going to show you a new build that I've been working on lately. After I created my first two build guides for my Oracle of Zeus build and the Great Alexander build, an idea came to me, and this idea was to create my new build guides in three parts, which means each new build guide will have 3 videos. The first part will talk about the performance of the build in the normal difficulty level, and it will show the state of the build at that point, and also it will show some of the most usable items I could get to make the build work at its best. The same goes for the second and third videos of this guide. The second will show everything related for the second difficulty of the game, and the third part of this video will talk about the third difficulty and the final form of the build. So, this way I think the guide will be more useful for those who would like to try this build, as it will have more details and it should be easier to understand the build. And if I had to name this type of build guides, I would call it maybe 3-way guide or a 3-way form type of guide. I don't know, it doesn't matter anyway. But all my next guides will be created using this 3-way system. And since we are talking about other guides, let me give you a hint for what builds are coming in the future. Do you know about those creatures who bite and drink the blood of people usually, and they can turn them into one of their kind, and also they can seduce them with their powers? Would you ever want to become one of those creatures and destroy the monsters in the world of Titan Quest? Or maybe you love dogs, wolves, you admire their nature, and you would like to have them as a company in your journey against the Titans, while you smash the heads of your enemies as you also get help from spiritual warriors. Well, if you do, then be patient. More goodies are coming and it is not fast food. Now, let's talk about this build, the Venomous Bride. This build is all about poison damage. After all, this is why this venomous title for the build. Also, I use the term bride because tan-tan, it makes it sound more dramatic. YOLO! So, to play this build, you should create a female character because it is a bride. Unless you like more kinky stuff and you would like to call a male character as a bride. Okay, that's up to you. The build anyway is about a woman of venomous actions and interactions. My water, just a minute. Yes. Now, the idea behind the gameplay of this build is to hit and run and let the poison kill the monsters in time. To do that, I chose to play with these two masteries, Rogue and Nature Mastery. The first mastery I chose to start with was the Rogue. The goal was to be able to deal as much poison damage as possible, so I tried to maximize the skill and venom weapon. This skill deals poison damage over 3 seconds, and it is the most important skill of this build. Of course, to make this skill even stronger and more effective, I have to maximize the 3 skills attached to it: the Nightshade skill, which adds more poison damage and also slows enemies, the Toxin Distillation, which improves the poison damage and duration of the base skill, and the Mad Drake skill, which confuses enemies and has a chance to fumble their attacks. The goal is to max out all those skills. I'm still level 39, so we have a long way to go. The second skill to max out of this mastery is the disarm traps. We need the damage boost against devices and construct enemies, because poison damage is not affecting those guys, so this is a mandatory skill to have. Calculated strike skill. I put 1 point only when I got to level 30 or so. This skill will be very useful against enemies that do not get affected by poison damage, but I could beat the normal difficulty of the game by having this skill in a low level, which means it is not important for the first difficulty level. But later I think it will become mandatory, we will see about that. And everything said about the skill goes to its add-on too. Lucky hit. The last skill of this build for now is the poison gas bomb. This is a ranged attack skill basically, as we throw a molotov of poison to packs of enemies, and this skill slows them down while dealing poison damage over time. This skill is very nice when combined at the same time with the plug skill of the nature mastery. In the nature mastery, the first skill, which is absolutely important, is the Heart of Oak skill. This build has to be as fast as possible, and this skill grants a fixed 10% total speed. Also, it boosts our health points, so we try to max out this skill as soon as possible. Later in the game, the two add-ons of this skill, Tranquility of Water and Permanence of Stone, will get maxed out, so we get a chance to pay less energy for casting skills and to boost our elemental resistances. Of course, as it was mentioned a while ago, we max out the plug skill. It deals poison damage per second and reduces enemies' health. Also, it is important to boost this skill by putting points to its two add-ons, the fatigue skill, which reduces the damage of the enemies and their total speed, and the susceptibility, which reduces the physical resistance and the elemental resistance of the enemies affected by the plug skill. Now let's stay here for a moment. As mentioned before, there are enemies that poison deals very little or no damage at all to them. For this type of enemies, such as this one here, this plug skill is still useful when it is boosted by fatigue and susceptibility. Especially the latter, because in this type of enemies we need to deal more physical damage, so this skill reduces their physical resistance, thus we deal more damage to them. So, the plug skill, boosted by its add-ons, becomes a very useful utility against most enemies of the game. And let's not forget that when we use the plug skill on enemies that are already affected by the poison gas bomb skill, then we get very nice results. Last but not least, the Briar Ward skill. For the first difficulty level, this was not necessary to invest much points to, but it was useful sometimes. This is a defensive and offensive skill at the same time, and also this can be used to block the path of our enemies. This will be maxed out with both of its add-ons, Stinging Needle, which deals poison retaliation damage, and the Sanctuary skill, which gives a nice health regeneration and energy cost reduction to us and damage absorption too. Now let's not forget about this, the refresh skill. This is a skill which will be very helpful as it reduces the cooldowns of our skills, so we can use them sooner and more times. So it will be maxed out in the future. For now it is not necessary. That is all when it comes to skills of this build. Let me remind you that some details may change in the next difficulty level of the game, although the plan of the build is around the skills I showed here. Maybe in the future there will be some changes, but for now those are the skills, and it is time to check the items of the build. But first let me tell you how I chose to build this character. All of my attribute points went to the dexterity attribute, and I mean all of them. Every single point I gained from leveling up or as a reward was spent on the dexterity attribute. I made this decision because I wanted to have the best possible poison damage I could get, and the dexterity attribute improves also the poison damage among other types of damage. In this edition of Titan Quest, poison damage is increased by 10% per 50 dexterity points. So when we get to 500 dexterity attribute points, this should increase our poison damage by 100%. So you get the idea behind this decision. Now, when one starts to work on this build based on that specific decision, then there is a problem floating in the air. The problem is that there are not enough strength points for our hero, so our hero cannot equip better items that require strength points. Thus, it is hard to create this build in the beginning of the game because we cannot equip better items that require strength points. So the way to play this build is to use very often the shops and try to buy items with bonus to strength points so we can equip better items sooner. Of course, if someone would like to play this build, he could spend some attribute points to strength too, so it can become easier to play, but my personal decision was to go the hard way so I could improve my poison damage as much as possible. And but let's not forget that when we put skill points to the rogue mastery, we gain some strength points, so it makes it a bit easier to make this build. Now that we saw the problem of this specific decision, we can see the most important item of this build for the first difficulty level of the game. This item is this epic ring, Captain's Signet. This ring gives life regeneration, shield block, armor protection and elemental resistance. But what we really care about this ring is the minus 25% strength requirements for weapons, armors and shields. This ring alone gave me the opportunity to really work on this build, and I finished the game on normal difficulty by using this ring. Let me take it off and see what happens. Now that I took it off, you can see that from all of my items only the shield becomes red, which means it becomes unusable. This is because this shield requires 303 strength points to be equipped, and I don't have this amount needed to do the job. So by using this ring I can still equip this shield and kick ass like a poison master, like a Venomous Bride. Now the question comes: why do you need to use this shield and you are not using some other shield which doesn't require so many strength points? Well, this shield, I was very lucky to find it. It is the Scaled Serpent shield. This shield is just perfect for this poison build, as it gives poison damage, a big chance to poison retaliation, and +2 skill levels to the toxin distillation skill, which is a mandatory skill for this build. So this shield is probably the best shield for this build for the first difficulty of the game. The next mandatory item for this build, for the first difficulty level at least, is this amulet, Venom Heart. This amulet is all about poison. It gives good poison resistance and a huge boost to poison damage. Also, it gives +2 skill levels to the Stinging Needle skill, which is one of the skills this build is going to use in the future. For the defensive items, one of the best choices would be the Rogue's Cover set items. Currently I use the Rogue's Harness along with the Rogue's Headband and the Rogue's Bracers. This set is all about Rogue Mastery, which is my main mastery, so I should not really explain why I use it here. The bonuses of the set increase further the poison damage we deal. It adds bleeding damage and health points. Also we get +1 to all skills of the Rogue Mastery by the chest armor of the set. Now I also have the fourth piece of this set, which is the Rogue's Greaves, which is an upgrade to the boots I currently use, but I do not equip it because if I do, I will not be able to use this shield anymore, as I will lose 11 strength points from my current boots and the shield become unusable. The boots I use are the Theban Greaves. This is a set item. It is based around strength matters, and this specific set is a very good choice to use with this build in the early stages of this build. I used 2 of these sets items when I was around level 14 or so, and this way I could get the very much needed strength points so I could equip faster better items for this build. So I used the Theban Greaves, which gives 11 strength points on its own, with the Theban Bracers, which gives 12 strength points on its own, and the bonus of these 2 equipped items is +16 strength points and defensive ability. So you see that this combination helps a lot in the early stages of this build. Of course, those items have strength requirements to be able to equip them, and first I needed to have more strength points to do so. Thus, the answer to this problem was a ring like this one. This ring is for level 22 heroes, but the same type of ring with bonus to strength points exists even for level 11 heroes. Back then I equipped one of those rings, which in combination with strength points gained by leveling up my Rogue Mastery and from small strength bonuses from other yellow items, I managed to equip the Theban set items and thus to work my build as I wanted to do. When it comes to the artifact, I have the Phylactery of Shadows. It gives more poison damage. I want this, of course, this poison damage boost. Life leech and energy leech, physical resistance and energy resistance, and as a completion bonus, 50% slower attacks from enemies. Now for the weapon. Let's not forget, this build is supposed to be hit and run and let the poison do the rest of the job. This is not a build where we want to focus on hitting one target again and again. So, to do this thing work, we care about weapons with the most possible base damage, even if those weapons are not very fast to attack with. What we care about when we equip a weapon is to see in the stats sheet the average damage going up in numbers, not the damage per second. The goal of this build is to hit once a target and go, so the DPS is not important. Of course, if we find one weapon that will improve both our average damage and DPS at the same time, then this is the best deal we can get. But until we find such a weapon, we try to improve our average damage. There will be some times where we need to focus on one target and deal multiple hits on that target. But those times will be the minority, and to compensate for that situation, we are going to improve our calculated strike and its add-on in the future. So, my weapon currently is a green spear, which deals fire damage, and also it deals poison damage over time, which is all we really care about. Of course, I have enchanted this item with a relic, which gives plus 9% total damage, which is absolutely awesome, and it's slower, it makes the attacks of our enemies slower. And for the finale of this guide, the secondary weapon that I use is a bow. It should be a bow because the envenom weapon skill works with bows too, and this skill with a bow is simply amazing. The bow I use is the epic Ordu composite bow, and the best thing about this bow is that it has the skill volley attached to it, and this means that sometimes this bow fires 3 projectiles instead of 1. This bow for this build is a powerful tool to have, at least for the first difficulty level. It is very useful. So guys, if you are still watching this video after so long, you are truly epic heroes and I salute you. Now, this is it for this guide. Remember, whatever said here is valid for the first difficulty level of the game. On the next 2 levels, things, especially item wise, will change. Also remember that this is the first video of this guide. 2 more video updates will come, one for the epic difficulty level and one for the legendary level. So if you like this video and you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to stay updated with future videos. Also hit the like button if you like what you see. A bit of support is always welcome, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.